and you talk about and use the word shelter. And what exactly?
Well, it's just those.
What is this shelter?
The shelters, those green bus shelters you see. It is not the hub that Go Line is planning down. Yeah, it's not an overnight. It's basically just a bus shelter. It's just where people have some cover, can wait for the bus to show up.
It's a bench.
It's a
it has a bench.
It's for pedestrians.
Yes.
Okay.
This is not a yes.
This is a shelter that we see all over the city.
That's correct.
At the current time.
Yes. Now, under this change in code, you could have a bus facility, but you'd have to go through the site plan process. I won't. It is a public. If it's done a public service, it could be that, but you would evaluate that at its own merits.
Right.
Through the site planning process. In this case, what they're trying to do here is it's pretty simple. I mean, as I said, it was your picky planning director who just said we need to change the code, and to go through this.
Right. And just again for general information, buses were at one time parked over by the old administration building.
Yes,
and that was pretty unsightly, and it did affect, in my opinion, the Old Town issue.
But I believe, without getting in a site plan, see, if we had to go through a site plan process, those kind of things would have come up. You know what I mean?
I do.
And just not throwing it on the that was a long time type of thing. But those are site plan things. But you're correct. You've got to be careful on some uses. Not all uses that are necessary government uses fit in there. But normally they will under most of these uses we're looking at. That's a different district. It isn't one of the districts affected by this.
But
I'll point out. Yeah.
But a bus parking lot could be considered.
Yes, a bus parking lot could be considered as one of these here. Okay. That's correct.
Mr. Chair, if it's okay. Since we're on the subject of the Go Line shelter, we're all familiar with what they're talking about here, what the shelters look like. Let me ask the question. I understand what the shelter looks like. If you go to the ordinance for the City Council to take a look at on page 2, under 62.35 permitted uses, in these districts, a building or premises may be used for the following purpose. And then they striked out site plan review is required for all uses in the district.
Because that's old language. We have a site plan.
Where do you see that?
You remember, I keep this calling the living code. We've changed this code so much we never got back in there to get that out. We require site plans. In the development review section has thresholds for site plans. So almost everything needs either administrative site plan or site plan approval by you. So we took that out because that's
all right. So it still will be reviewed, and let's say for the sake of argument, they change their ideas on the bus shelter and say we want to put up a type of little holding building, but it's still going to have to be reviewed.
Yeah, a site plan
they just can't change it.
Right. It would come through me. This would be administrative review, but I took that out. I don't want you to. I should have mentioned that. We took it out because it's superfluous now in our code. That's the only reason I took it out. I failed to mention that.
What I have a concern with is I don't have a problem. I understand what you're saying with the Go Line shelter, where it can be used in the downtown district, where it makes it clear where they can put these up. My question's answered on what type of shelter it's going to be. What I have a problem with is you could have some type of bus hub there, bus parking lot or whatever, and I'm a little concerned if we add that to this, does it put us behind the egg bowl like we all had the problem over there in Original Town where it took for years to finally get that thing moved out of there? So I'm hesitant to include that in this change. I understand the shelter. That, to me, we're okay with that. We're okay to move forward on that. We're okay. But adding the other to it, I'm a little concerned about that because I don't want to go back to what we had over at Original Town. And for some of you that weren't familiar with it, the Go Line folk, through no fault of their own, that's where they had parked their buses for quite some time. The county, for whatever their reasons were, it took quite a long time to finally make heads or tails of this with the county, and the neighborhood for years suffered under the situation with the buses over there where they were parked. And I don't want to do a revisit on that where it could happen in other neighborhoods, or where you all know we're doing redevelopment in the downtown area. We're going to have residents possibly living above work centers. We don't want to bring an adverse effect in where it's not properly vented, where it could be pushed where you have a bus parking lot.
Well, let me point out, the goal line was in an inappropriate zoning district. This is only dealing with the commercial districts in the downtown. Okay. These are the areas you would put a bus. You want multimodal, you want choices and all that. And remember, site planning is where you get into a lot of these uses sound good here, but they may not be appropriate in a specific situation. So I want to just say that it can't go into residential. We're only doing these in the commercial district. I try to keep it a narrow focus of where we would allow these, Mr. Daig. I didn't want to open it up so we would be dealing with a bus hub, in a neighborhood like we had to deal with in original town area. Yeah, that was, and they were in violation. If you all recall, we went through to get them out of there. We looked askance for a while because they kept saying they were, and they never moved, and we moved on them in a code violation. So that was finally rectified. They moved out of there. But so I just want you to understand, this is only in commercial districts in the downtown.
But I have a couple questions. Do you mind? We're talking about C1A, C1B, B1, and C1. What we're doing is broader than thinking about this single use most of us have in mind for the buses, okay? Yeah. What we're talking about here is any one of those categories, and there may be another one that I'm not aware of, we can now implement a government-type facility into that area. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So this is not specific for the GO line. It's a general in the downtown area. So if we wanted to put a new courthouse in on a piece of commercial property that is now a permitted use as just a few moments before the vote would be, then it was not a permitted use. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
If it's not,
and that means a lot of different ramifications to this, what we're doing here. But they still have to go through the process.
They still have to go through the process.
Okay.
And yes.
So, may I?
Yeah.
Go ahead. Okay. So I just want to make it clear, if you would clarify for us, Tim.
Yes.
So when it goes through the site plan approval process, even though it would be permitted, if there's something that arises during that process, that site planning process.
Yeah, and that's correct. I mean, there's two levels of review, as you well know. There's ones that the staff administrative approval, even those have to meet specific standards. If there's outside impacts, we'll make them do certain things. Then there's that other level where the public hearing notices to all the people, property owners 500 feet, that they have to, and they have to address those kind of impacts. So that's where you pick up. You want to put a 100,000 square foot county complex downtown or something. Obviously, it's going to have impacts.
Well, the other impact that we haven't mentioned yet is when we do this, we are taking the city commercial land and business land off the tax rolls and putting them into a government which pays us nothing to be there. Thought. And we're now allowing them to come into the city where every piece of property we have now is in some way could be, not necessarily will be, but could be devalued. And that doesn't seem to be a positive thing to me.
And along that,
although bringing the buses downtown brings people downtown.
Right. I don't think
so I'll go along with that. But
I don't think any of our governments have enough money to be down there buying more property. We're trying to sell off.
You can't sell the one you have now. I don't want you.
I mean,
you're wanting to.
No, I agree, but I mean, then let's go after every not-for-profit while we're at it.
Well, I'm in favor of some of those. I'll be on the other side of the fence on a couple of those. So
but I understand what you're saying. This doesn't mean a wholesale. This just makes it more flexible to do that. I mean, we allow utilities down here, but you get into questions, administrative service. What's the difference between a government office with a bureaucrat like me working there than a finance office? Maybe they're working harder. I don't know. But
one pays taxes.
I think, Mr. Lord, you actually brought up a good point on the tax situation with the government use. What I get concerned with, and they all have good causes, is your nonprofits. And you keep opening it up and you take things off the tax rolls. Again, all your nonprofits have great causes. But will you become just an area of nonprofits where you have a very limited tax base? That could happen. So that is some concerns.
Well,
Again, back to the bus shelters, I don't have a problem with that.
They can already do that.
Yeah, they can. But we're allowing more of it. What we're doing now is allowing more of it, as opposed to
More, okay.
I think you have to look at the locations where the government service needs to be had. We're talking about a bus shelter, which is clearly something that should be in the downtown district
Yes.
and is part of that. And it may be you need
Is there a county property right across the street from that they could get into? We could take it off the county tax rolls?
well, to be honest with you, it's already off our tax rolls. It's county property. So it doesn't really matter
That's true.
what we
In this
do.
particular case, I guess we're beating a dead horse here.
May I ask a question?
Sure, you can.
As I was going through all these, permitted uses, and I'm looking at, what's going to be allowed in terms of administrative offices and service facilities and all that, I'm trying to think what could possibly be an unintended consequence here that we haven't considered. Is there anything that comes to your mind that tax rolls, taking property off tax roll, obviously, was one of the first ones that I considered. Funeral homes private, but fire stations are not, financial institutions, efficiency apartments. These could be mixed-use situations. I mean, would you have a government office on the bottom and then maybe efficiency apartments on top?
Well, that's a possibility.
I've seen it.
And so those are the kinds of things I was trying to imagine.
But if the government's, there's money that Peggy knows all the taxing. I mean, we're making money on, Cindy does that. Okay. But I don't believe it's just off the tax. There are certain things that would, on that kind of stuff.
Some of that is
I was
taxable.
just, looking at unintended consequences. Is there anything updating the comp plan next year? Would any of this be grandfathered in if there's like an application in the process?
I'm sorry, what would be grandfathered in?
Any of these uses now when we update the comp plan?
Well, the
next
comp
year?
plan, we're not going to be dealing with a lot of these uses except in a policy format that we make. Eventually we need to make, the code really needs to be vetted very closely. I've talked about that. We got too many zoning districts.
Right.
We've got incompatible uses in some of the districts. It needs to really be vetted. And the comp plan hopefully will give some direction so that can be done, through an implementation thing. But it won't affect these at this time. Until other changes have to be done to the code.
I was just doing a what-if kind of thing.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I have a conundrum here. I think the subjects and arguments raised are terrific. I hadn't thought about some of them, quite frankly. Is there a way to deal with the bus shelter issue by itself and to delay this process relative to the government district until necessary?
Well, the point is, I didn't just point out the bus shelter. That looks kind of as a principal use on the property. I wanted to make it clean. I don't want to hold this up. Okay, we need to move this forward. Okay, but what you're telling me, you won't. If you're dead set against this other stuff, I don't want to hold it up for those kind of things. I don't think your concerns are that going to be really in reality. You're going to come play. Remember, government's got to make decisions.
They may not even happen overnight.
There won't be any application when you show up at a council meeting and tell them, no, you're not building that over there, and you're not buying that. There's a lot more political process because we, the taxpayers, own the property, through the council or the county commission and that. And there's a lot more interplay on what you're going to do. It isn't just because you have their zoning, we're going to be out. That isn't how this works. It's private sector is a lot different than what government has to do. Obviously, with the transparency and the sunshine law we have and all that stuff. So I think I don't want to parse this any further. I don't think your concerns are that important. They're nice. I appreciate what you've brought up because, that could happen. But I don't think reality that is a concern to be about this. The only concern I would have if there was some use that would be that the government come up with obnoxious, but I don't know how it would even get out of the political framework before it would got before us in a site plan review. And even then, you would still have to meet the criteria in the code and the standards that are set there. So.
And that's, you said how long ago was it that they brought forward this thing about the bus shelter for Go Line?
Yeah,
and
it was at least
3
or 4 months ago, and
Yeah.
then it brought to my attention. They want to move forward with this. I think there's a dedication here. I don't know if we have Council Member Graves here that she may want to speak on it. But again, we're looking at a legislative item here. This isn't a site specific. We need to move forward with this. All right, and I hate to parse this too much at this point in time. I just don't think it's really something you have to really be that concerned. How's that?
Sure.
Basically, this is going to enable you to make decisions when they come before you.
Yes.
Almost like on an administrative level, yeah.
Exactly. I mean, that's the thing. As I pointed out, whoever wrote these land use definitions, the way they wrote them made it very hard. And why it's important is when we go through court cases, we're going through this right now in vacation rentals and the planning director's authority to interpret land uses in that. And we're trying to be very careful on what we do because we want to be sure that we dot all the I's and cross the T's on that. And that's why, I thought this would be necessary without going through and identifying every government use I can think of and sticking in as a use.
That's where I was getting confused, worried.
Are there some government uses we're opening this up to, Tim, that we haven't thought about, but you may not want there? I mean, let me make. I think Ken will jump on me for me with me on this one. Let's just say the government decides to handle marijuana sales. There's one.
We restricted
They're
that.
now permitted use in that, and we have to give them a site plan.
They got to be in a.
Uh-oh, we have somebody would you like to speak from the public?
We took care of that one.
I'm glad somebody has an answer.
Would you state your name, please, for the
James O'Connor, City Manager.
Okay.
Let's not lose the picture here. We are the county seat, so government is a core industry for us. Okay. And so we need to keep that in mind. If you want to go and outlaw churches, that's a different thing, but we are a core industry of government. And having this flexibility, I think, is very important because these are the areas we want them to go into. The marijuana issue we have under another proposed code that's going to sort of control that outlet. And hopefully we won't be in the marijuana sales unless, of course, it generates a lot of revenue for the city. But I'm hoping that, knowing the state as I do, they're going to put state taxes on it and make us sell it. So it's another little challenge. But you stop and think about, and you talk about tax, not paying ad valorem taxes. I would have loved to have that district court, that federal court here in Vero that is now located in Fort Pierce.
Okay.
I mean, those are the type of assets that you have, and we just need to have that flexibility. You can think of all the types of businesses that government can get into, but most of them are more positive than they are negative in the fact that they are situated to address needs of the community itself. They're not going to get into the food giveaways, typically speaking. They will be in the food stamp business possibly, but it's not one of those things that you're going to have those challenges, I think, that you could equate to some nonprofits that you question, should they be nonprofit? So, but again, I just want to bring to, that government is a core industry for the city of Vero Beach because we are a county seat.
And the courthouse and things like it do bring a lot of people into the city who buy lunches, who have attorneys nearby, one have the offices. There's a lot of positives that go sometimes. So I'm not forgetting.
I've already got inquiries to do some offices right near the courthouse. It attracts that.
And it also provides us an opportunity to complain.
It's not all negative. I didn't mean to be that way, though.
We get to complain, too, because the county sits out there.
Right.
But, as long as they buy utilities from us, they're not all that bad. So
it's a good thing you came forward. You might have saved the day.
Oh, I think it was going to go that way, but I just want to maybe cut it short a little bit.
Tim was losing it. I thought Tim was losing it.
Tim put on a good argument.
I thought he was losing it. I'm not sure you're going to carry the day, Tim. You had to have help. I told your staff earlier, you just can't handle it, Tim.
When they left, I decided to went in and supported. I'm 10 feet behind him all the time.
He'd been up in his office. I was up the way. He said, "Look,
Well, that's
all your
not
things
all
are
the
falling
time.
apart."
There are times that we come into challenges, but in this particular
We're
case,
taking airtime off the television. We got to keep going here, okay? There are additional questions of Mr. McGarry, if he can handle them.
I think Mr. McGarry is right. He made a little note here on page number 2. The proposal is intended as a quick fix to the problem. And then he made reference to the real need is for a comprehensive evaluation of the city's zoning districts.
Yeah.
And my question to our planning director is, when can that happen?
I would like to start that after we get the comp plan done.
Okay.
And when I retire, then the next person can do it.
Thank you for
Government
that
people.
answer.
It's just government. That's all it is.
All this on a little bus
Are there
house.
any additional questions for Mr. McGarry?
Oh,
Is there any further discussion? We'd like to have a discussion on this.
I'm okay.
And we should ask the public. We haven't had public comment, have we?
We had Mr. O'Connor's public
He's jumped
input.
in without even being. Oh, okay. We're open as to. You were. That's true.
I feel much better.
We're opening for public comment. Seeing nobody coming forward, we'll immediately close public comment. Are we ready to call for the question?
Sure.
Somebody make a motion, please.
Go for it.
I move that we accept the, accept, is that what I say?
Yeah. The ordinance.
The ordinance of the City of Vero Beach amending Chapter 62, Article 3,
As proposed.
as proposed.
Do I have a second to that?
Second?
I'll second.
Go.
We have a first and a second. Can you call for the vote, please?
Mr. Dagg?
Yes.
Mr. Cahoy?
Yes.
Ms. Polinsky?
Yes.
Mrs. Manous?
Yes.
Mr. Lauper?
Yes.
Passes 5-0.
Thank you. Tim, are there planning department matters?
I don't have anything to add.
Does the board members have any additional matters to bring forward?
I'd just like to ask questions about two developments.
Okay.
Number one, can you give us the progress on the townhome development on 18th Street?
Yeah.
I asked the staff about that. They said there is work going on there. Now, everybody, when I've said that to them, they've looked at me. I'll look into it again because this project died at one time, then we resurrected it, and that was a question that came up. In fact, I was talking to one of the board members who was interested personally in whether it was going forward. So, Mr. Coy, I'll look into that. I haven't been by there, but it doesn't look like anything from 17th. But that's the way I come to work a lot of times. So I'll check on that. I haven't heard anything more except what staff's told me.
Thank you. And the other site was the Jetson building that's being built on 60.
Mm-hmm.
The building being as close as it is to the street. I wasn't on the board at the time that came before us. I assume